Today was a good day for the defense, and I think they did some damage to the government's case. So I'm going to give you the highlights of today's testimony. I'm also going to talk to you about strategy. I'm going to share with you my trial wisdom, having tried a lot of cases and trained and supervised a lot of trial lawyers. So we're going to talk about strategy, and I'm also going to say that if the defense was successful in discrediting Lisa Peterson's testimony today, they may have saved their client, Sunny Balwani, 4 years in prison. And I'll show you my calculation and how I got there. So, hi there, I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor, and also someone who's trained a lot of lawyers. You may recognize me because I provided a lot of legal analysis on the Elizabeth Holmes case. So, this video is simply my opinion. It's for education and information purposes. I want to know what your analysis is, so please do leave a comment. Please subscribe to my channel. Please support my work by subscribing, and thank you to all of you who have subscribed. I appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, this Friday, April 29th, 6 to 7 o'clock, we're going to have our 6 to 7 p.m. California time. We're going to have our first live stream, and I'm going to do a live legal analysis of Friday's testimony in the Balwani case. And I'm going to take your questions. So if you want to submit your questions ahead of time, please leave it in the comments, or you're welcome to submit your questions when we do the live chat. And by the way, you want to subscribe to this channel so then you can participate in the live stream. So hit that like button. All right, so let's talk about the highlights. So today, Lisa Peterson mostly was on cross-examination, and the next witness was Balwani's dermatologist. I'll get to that on Friday. Okay, so let's talk about Lisa Peterson and why her testimony is significant. And Lisa Peterson was the witness, the investor witness for the RDV Corporation, which is the DeVoss Family. They invested almost $100 million into Theranos. And I'm going to show you the indictment, and I'll show you why that amount of money matters and why her testimony, or discrediting her testimony, matters significantly for Sunny Balwani. All right, so let me get into the testimony of what she testified to today. They asked her whether or not she knew that Sunny Balwani and Elizabeth Holmes were dating. She said she didn't know. If she had known, she would have asked more questions. And she also made a comment about she wanted to make sure the right people were in the right seats. In other words, that Sunny didn't become the COO. In other words, let me restate it. Sunny became the COO because of merit, not because he was dating Elizabeth Holmes. So here's where the defense made several points, several very good points for their case. Number one, they had, on cross-examination, they pointed out that the Theranos board approved appointing Sunny Balwani as the COO, not Elizabeth Holmes, but Sunny Balwani was approved by the Theranos board. Okay, so that helps for his credibility, right? So, possibly. Then they asked her on cross whether or not Theranos claimed it could run 200 plus blood tests. If you look at yesterday's video, I go through the binder and the memo that she put together and the representations that were made by Elizabeth Holmes and or Sunny Balwani. Anyway, so they asked her whether or not Theranos claimed it could run 200 blood tests on its devices. She said that definitely Elizabeth Holmes said those things, that they could run 200 tests on their devices. But she didn't know if Balwani said those things. Did Balwani make those representations? She didn't know. But he was in the room, she said, and he didn't correct her. Well, I don't know if that's going to work with the jury, right? The jury is going to be asked, what representations did Sunny Balwani make? Lisa Peterson is telling us she doesn't know if Sunny Balwani made those representations. So maybe that's a point for the defense, okay? Then the defense counsel asked Peterson, they basically impeached her based on her prior testimony. And that's why we always, in this case, she was impeached by statements she made to the grand jury, because the grand jury is the one that set out the indictment. So the grand jury, she said that she didn't recall Elizabeth Holmes saying a specific claim, making a specific claim about the test, but that she understood from what they read and heard that Theranos devices could do 200 tests. In other words, Lisa Peterson read the Fortune article written by Roger Parloff. She went through the binder materials. She put that memo together. She understood that those were the representations. But she didn't recall if Elizabeth Holmes made a specific claim about the tests. Well, that helps Balwani, right? Because in the grand jury testimony, she said she didn't remember a specific claim, but she just testified that Elizabeth Holmes definitely made a claim about the 200 tests, right? So was she impeached by what she said earlier, a prior inconsistent statement? So, an understanding, whether or not you understood something, is that enough to equate with a misrepresentation? I don't know. It's certainly something the defense could argue. That she could not say, Lisa could not say that Balwani made these representations. And in fact, even though she said definitely Elizabeth did, she didn't say that during the grand jury. She said that Elizabeth Holmes doesn't recall Elizabeth Holmes making a specific claim. So I think that's going to hurt the government's case, right? That's a point for the defense. All right, so then another point that the defense did today was that they pointed out that memo that I showed you that Lisa Peterson put together for the DeVoss family, if you look at yesterday's video, that memo that she put together, the defense got into the timing of this. When did you show the memo to the DeVoss family? So the defense pointed out that the 2014 memo that Lisa Peterson projected the return that the DeVoss family would make on their $100 million investment, Lisa Peterson said it would be 5 times at 30% IRR in 7 years. But she also wrote that no return estimates were provided by Theranos. And that's good for the defense, right? Because in the memo, it's Lisa Peterson who's projecting what the return on the investment is going to be. And Lisa Peterson just testified she didn't get these projections from Theranos. She made these projections. She's the one that made these representations to the DeVoss family on what their return could be. That's good for the defense. Then the defense counsel tried to get Peterson to acknowledge that before she prepared that memo for the DeVoss family had already committed to making the $100 million investment in Theranos. She said that, yes, they did commit verbally. That's good for Balwani because that shows that the DeVoss family made their decision to invest without any of the information that was provided in that memo, the statements, the binder, all those representations that came from Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, or Sunny Balwani. Lisa Peterson just testified that the DeVoss family had already made their decision to invest even before her memo. That's good for the defense. So their investment decision was not based on anything that Lisa Peterson said in that memo. Okay? Then Lisa Peterson did say that the DeVoss family did double their investment in Theranos from $50 million to $100 million. It was a discussion that several of the DeVoss family members had in the parking lot after they had met with Sunny and Elizabeth. They decided to double their investment to $100 million. Okay, then after the meeting in which the DeVoss family members had with Sunny and Elizabeth, the DeVoss family verbally agreed to give $100 million. And that's when, after the verbal agreement, is when Lisa Peterson put the due diligence memo together that was presented to the entire DeVoss family. And she said, I can't say that they read the memo, but we definitely discussed at length with them on the plane. So the substance of what Lisa Peterson put in the memo was discussed in the plane ride. It wasn't, they didn't have these discussions, or the memo wasn't presented to the DeVoss family before they made their verbal commitment. So again, that's good for the defense. Then on redirect, which I call rehabilitation, right? The prosecution said that Peterson did testify that Theranos statements regarding Theranos's representations about the technology, fast, accurate, reliable, etc., was in the marketing materials, and it was in present tense, not in, quote, aspirational, right? So the representations that were made in the materials in the binder and the representations that were made to Lisa Peterson were all made in present tense, right? So if you look at the indictment, the prosecution alleges, were they presently capable? Was the technology presently fast, accurate, and reliable? And so Lisa Peterson is showing for the government's case that those representations were in present tense, not something that they hoped they could do in the future. All right, so Lisa Peterson, that was the end of her testimony. So the next witness I was called today is Dr. Sunny Balwani. He also testified in the Holmes case. He's Sunny Balwani's dermatologist, and he was the lab director after Adam Rosendorf left. I'm going to get into his testimony tomorrow. Friday, because it'll also be for Friday's live stream. I will talk about Dr. Balwani's testimony because I'll also be able to tell you about his cross-examination. Now I want to get to strategy. Okay, so if you're the defense attorney, you've got Lisa Peterson on the stand, and she testifies to that $100 million investment. And why is that important? Because if you add up all the numbers of the amount of loss that the investors lost, it comes to approximately $155 million. If you can somehow, as a defense attorney, raise reasonable doubt as to that $100 million, so the $100 million of the $155, if you could somehow impeach, discredit Lisa Peterson's testimony, the memo was generated after they made their investment decision. The projections were based on Lisa Peterson's projections, not on Sunny Balwani's or Elizabeth Holmes. Sunny Balwani didn't make any claims to her, etc. Then the amount of time that Sunny Balwani is looking at, if he gets convicted on any of these counts, is significantly less. So let me show you quickly. I'm going to show you the indictment, and then I'm going to show you my calculation looking at the sentencing guidelines, okay? So the indictment, and you can look at the video I did on the indictment on the Holmes case, the Holmes and the Sunny Balwani trial. You can look at that indictment if you want. I'm just going to show you one piece of the indictment, and this relates to the investor counts. So Lisa Peterson testified as to count 7. There's that $99,999,984. That's the lion's share of the amount of loss that Sunny Balwani and Elizabeth Holmes were accused of defrauding. Okay? $99 million of $155 million is significant if the defense is able to show reasonable doubt there, to discredit what Lisa Peterson said, to say that the investment decision was not based on anything Sunny Balwani said. Therefore, you jurors can come back not guilty on that count, or you can be undecided. But, there's reasonable doubt there. Maybe that's what the defense is going to say. Again, this is just my opinion. But why it matters, the amount of loss, because the more that you defraud people, the greater amount of money that you defraud people, the more time you're looking at as far as prison time. Okay. So if you add up all these numbers, counts 3 through 8, that's approximately 155 million. So your strategy as a defense attorney is to find ways to kick out these accounts. Kick out the counts. Is there something you could do with Lisa Peterson, which I think they did on count 7, that the jury could throw out that count? The next, Brian Grossman is count 6. If he testifies, how can they discredit his testimony? How can they poke holes in that to let the jury kick out count 6? Do you see what I'm getting at? Okay, so now, why does this $99 million matter? Let's look at the sentencing guidelines and why I think if the defense was successful today with Lisa Peterson in poking holes in that testimony and showing some reasonable doubt, that amount of loss could be thrown out. Okay, so and why does that matter? Let me show you the sentencing guidelines. All right, this is what the judge looks at. Judge can consider as far as what kind of sentence if Sunny Balwani is convicted, right? But let's look at the calculation here. Okay, so this is regarding paragraph 2B1 here. We're dealing with a case about fraud, and the sentencing guidelines sets out potential range of sentence that a judge could apply. And again, it's discretionary, and it's up to the judge whether or not, it's up to his discretion as to how much time a defendant for fraud would get sentenced to, right? So because it's a fraud case, the base level, so we start at level 7. So remember this, level 7. Then this is why the $99 million matters, because it's the amount of loss that exposes a defendant, if they're convicted, of significant prison time. So you start at base level 7. So we're going to do our math here. 7. Now we have to go, okay, if it's $155 million, if Sunny Balwani is convicted of all those investor counts, he's looking at 7 plus 26, which is level 33. But if the defense was successful today, and I think it can be argued, that if you kick out the $99 million, you're left with approximately, what is that, 90, so you're left with approximately $55 million, right? So that takes it to look at paragraph paren L here. So right here, if he's convicted of everything, he's looking at level 33. But if they kick out the Peterson count, the DeVoss family count of that $99 million, we take the 155 minus the 99 million, we're approximately 55 million. So it's only adding 22. So 22 plus 7 is 29. So from 29 to, he went from 33, if he's convicted on the Peterson count, to 29. And why that's important, I'll show you. We'll scroll down here to the sentencing table. Okay, so it's fraud. So we start at level 7 and we add 26 if he's convicted on the Peterson count, the 99 million. He's looking at, assuming he has no criminal history, he's looking at 135 months to 168 months. But if the defense is successful on the Peterson count, raising reasonable doubt as to what representations were made for the DeVoss family to invest that $99 million, if the defense is able to raise enough reasonable doubt there, then it's level 29, right? It's only 55 million, not only, but 55 million. So that's 87 months. So if I did my math right, 135 minus 87 is approximately 4 years of prison. So that one count, Lisa Peterson's testimony, equates to 4 years in prison if Sunny Balwani is convicted. And again, that's generally. I'm not looking at ways to reduce the sentence or ways to aggravate or increase the sentence. I'm just doing general here. All right, so if you're looking at strategy, that testimony of Lisa Peterson discrediting her has a significant impact on whether or not Sunny Balwani is convicted and whether or not he's convicted of that count and how much time he serves in prison. So I wanted to point that out to you because I think the defense did a good job today in poking some holes, raising some reasonable doubt, as to what did the DeVoss family know at the time they made their decision to invest in Theranos. Was it based on representations that Sunny Balwani made? Was it based on projections that Lisa Peterson made? So, what's your analysis? Because that's my analysis. Let me know what you think. Please do leave a comment. And please do subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. And do join me. Please join me for our first live stream Friday night from 6 to 7 p.m. California time. So, thank you for watching. Do subscribe and hit that like button.